Shalom, everyone. My name is Rabbi Elliot Salo Schoenberg, International Director of Placement for the Rabbinical Assembly. This is a series of videos made for your availability to discuss issues of integration into your new position, your new place of rabbinic employment. We have, for almost 20 years, called this Eit Ratzon. Today, I'd like to look at some of the early beginnings of this theory and introduce some of the background material. Let me begin by suggesting that a transition committee is a key component to your success as a rabbi in your new place of rabbinic employment. 20 years ago, when we began having these conversations, schools, campuses, congregations didn't have transition committees. Now many of them do, but not all. So your first and key task is actually to convince your lay leadership, to teach them, to instruct them that they should create a transition committee. The transition committee's main task is to integrate you into your new place of rabbinic employment. Sometimes the place of rabbinic employment is too busy. Sometimes they don't see its value. Sometimes they're just moved on to other things. It's time to take a pause to show your lay leadership that in order for you to succeed, there needs to be a transition committee. What is a transition committee? If the search committee was somewhere between 50 and 60 individuals, a transition committee is 3 or 4 individuals. Some of them are holdovers from the search committee, and their task is to actually implement a path for you to integrate your way into the congregation, to worry about how you are doing personally and individually. The key difference from other committees is they're not there to evaluate you. They're not there to give you feedback that says you're succeeding or not succeeding. Their task is to show you a path, to introduce you to people, to set a tone for how you integrate into the community. If they already have a transition committee, great. If not, take a pause and talk to them about beginning to have a transition committee so that you will be able to integrate into your new place of employment. We are calling this a transition committee. We are calling the integration of the new rabbi into the community transition. It's important to take a moment and understand the difference between change and transition. And one of the images I want you to keep in mind is that of an iceberg, of triangle of an iceberg. And the very tip top, what you can see over the waterline, that's about change. Everything that goes underneath the waterline, the broader base of the triangle, that's all about transition. It's harder to see, but it exists. Harder to see, but it's important. Harder to see, but it can have major consequences on how you do in integrating into the new community. So what's the difference between change and transition? Change is situational. Change is a one-time event. Change is physical. Change is concrete. Change is when you accepted the position of headmaster of the school. Change is when the board voted to promote you from assistant rabbi to associate rabbi. What is transition? Transition is the process that you go through as you move to deal and understand the change. What is transition? It's not a one-time event. It's ongoing. It's not just the act. It's not just the one-time event. It is the psychological, it is the emotional, and it is all the spiritual processes that are going on to integrate this idea of a change. Change is thought of as program-oriented. Change is thought of as linear. Change is usually planned. There's a search committee. People have thought about what they're looking for in the new rabbi. What's a transition? Transition is a process. It's circular. not linear. Different people are going through their understanding of transition at a different rate, at a different speed, and a different time consequence. And one of the key differences about transition is most often transition is not planned for. It's just assumed that it'll be all right. And one of the major points that we are trying to make here, that not only is there a difference between change and transition, but just like you plan for change, you need to plan for the transition. The best transition takes place when they are done with intention. So what changes in a transition? What's the psychological process that's going on? What are some of the issues that transition raises that we might not have thought of? Number one is your role is changing in this transition. For example, you have a baby. Suddenly, you are no longer just a husband. Now you are a parent. When you were promoted from assistant rabbi to senior rabbi of the congregation, no longer are you in the role of being the helper or the supporter or the sidekick of the senior rabbi. Now you are the decision maker. When you move from becoming an experienced teacher in a day school setting to becoming the headmaster, your role changes. Now you are called upon to be a visionary. So the first thing that changes in a transition is your role. The second thing that changes, it's all about relationships. When you become a new parent, you meet other new parents in parenting groups. When you take on a new job, wherever it is that you go, there are new co-workers to meet. And there are existing relationships that now become redefined if you are in a different position in that job. Relationship building, thinking about relationships, creating relationships, maintaining relationships is one of the things that's new and different in a transition. Third thing that is different in a transition are the routines. This can be very subtle, but it's also very significant. So for example, when you become a new parent, all of a sudden when you have a little baby crying in the middle of the night, not only is the baby's sleep routine different, but so is yours as a parent, which can have major consequences on what it's like to get up and be tired the next day. When you take on a new rabbinic position, your routines also change. It may be, for example, that the commuting pattern is different. And once 5 minutes is now an hour, or it was once an hour is now 5 minutes. One of the things, one of the stories we hear is that different synagogues had different days when their rabbi used to visit the hospital. So in your former job, you used to go on Tuesday and Thursday. One of the new routines may be that now you go on Monday and Wednesday. And when you think about it, what are all the consequences of that kind of adjustment? So one of the things that changes in a transition is your routine. The last piece that changes in a transition is your assumptions about yourself and about your worldview. You will discover, now that you are in a new or different rabbinic position, that you will discover new aspects of yourself. So going back to the metaphor of being a parent, when you were just a husband, you thought of yourself about trying to be a loving and devoted spouse, trying to be a loving and devoted husband or wife. Now, all of a sudden that you are a parent, you're worried about the future. You're worried about your child. Am I a good father? Am I a good mother? When you take on a new role in your congregation or your school and you transition into a new position, you are thinking, who am I? Who will I be? And will I be successful at it? That promotes a lot of anxiety, but it's there as part of a transition. So to summarize this part, what changes in a transition? Your role may change, your relationships change, your routines change, and your assumptions about yourself change, finally, as well. Some final thoughts about transition. Transition is complex, and one of the things that we've been saying throughout this video presentation is we want you to think about it. We want you to go through the intention. We want you to go through the transition with intention. One summary point that I would like to make is you, as the rabbi, are not the only one going through this transition. Your family is going through this transition. Your spouse is going through this transition. Your children are going through this transition. And so is your lay leadership. But you have different kinds of lay leadership. You have those who are way ahead of the curve, who are on the search committee, who are waiting for you to start and are actually just ready for you to get out there and get going. And there are a bunch of other people in the congregation, still in the lay leadership, who haven't even met you yet. The first time that they will actually be seeing you working as a rabbi will be on the high holiday. They'll also be going through the transition, but they'll be going through it at a different time span, a different pace than someone else. So the first thing to remember that there are a number of different people going through this transition in addition to yourself. The second thought is that you inevitably go through this transition. You may try to deny it. Your lay leadership especially may try to deny it and say, we don't have to pay attention to it. But we all go through this transition, and it's best to go through it by thinking about it and doing it with intention. Sometimes you get stuck. What do I mean by that? I mean by simply understanding the theory, which we have been discussing, doesn't necessarily help you move through it. It might be helpful, but sometimes you get stuck, and you just need to work through the transition. Third summary point is that the first person that you need to take care of during this transition is yourself. You need to work through this transition. You must understand this transition in order to be a guide and a mentor and a helper to everyone else who's around you, your family, and to your lay leadership. They'll be going through this transition, and so will you, but you need to take care of yourself first, and then help everyone else work their way through this transition. A fourth summary point is that this is a time of many different emotions. It's actually a time of mixed emotions. There are lots of pieces to lots of people. That's very exciting. It's terrific. We got the new rabbi. We got the new headmaster. Things are going to be different here. That's also exciting. At the same time, there's another whole set of emotions going on. Lots of people are anxious. Will this new rabbi like me? There are lots of people who are feeling angry. They're feeling at a loss. They lost something. They had a wonderful relationship with the former rabbi. Will this new rabbi like me? Who will I be in the eyes of this new rabbi? I liked what I had before, and I lost something. It's a time of very mixed emotions. Excitement on the one hand, fear or anxiety on the other. Finally, I'd like to point out that when you go through this transition, it is a process. There's no one point where you can say it begins. There's no one point where you can say it's over. There are lots of people who write about it and say it takes from 12 to 18 months. So be patient. Understand that at different points you'll have different feelings. You'll worry about different aspects of it, but it'll take a while. Give yourself at least 12 months to work yourself into integrating into this new position. This has been Eit Ratzon. My name is Rabbi Elliot Salo-Schoenberg. I'm the International Director of Placement for the Rabbinical Assembly, and this has been a series of videotapes talking you through the issues of transition.